The first time I saw humans, I was convinced they were the least impressive species ever to gain entrance to the Galactic Council. As a Vaxian intelligence officer, I've dedicated my career to observing and analyzing new species. My designation is Crix 9, and I've seen civilizations rise and fall across 17 sectors. But humans, they appeared so utterly inconsequential. Nexus Station hummed with activity that cycled as it always did. The massive interplanetary trading hub served as the beating heart of commerce for 12 star systems, a neutral ground where species who had once waged genocidal wars now haggled over exotic fruits and technology patents. The central plaza stretched nearly 2 kilometers across, a marvel of engineering suspended in the void between stars, its transparent dome offering breathtaking views of the surrounding nebula. I observed from my usual spot at the Crystalline Cafe, nursing a cup of fermented algae extract while monitoring the comings and goings of various delegations. The cafe's location provided an optimal vantage point, elevated enough to survey the entire eastern quadrant of the plaza, yet inconspicuous among the dozens of similar establishments that catered to weary travelers and local bureaucrats. The human delegation had arrived 3 standard rotations ago, their first official contact with the Council. I had studied their transmission records extensively, but seeing them in person only confirmed my initial assessment. They were soft, fragile creatures with no apparent natural defenses, no scales, no exoskeletons, no venomous appendages, not even basic armor plating, just flimsy coverings of processed plant fibers and animal hides over their vulnerable flesh. Their skeletal structure was internal, making them susceptible to impact trauma. Their visual and auditory capabilities were laughably limited, and their reaction time seemed glacial compared to most Council species. My superiors had tasked me with determining whether humans presented any threat worth monitoring. So far, my report was trending toward negligible concern. The human party consisted of 7 individuals, 3 females and 4 males. If I had correctly identified their dimorphic characteristics, they moved through the station with wide-eyed wonder that betrayed their technological inferiority. The other species largely ignored them, occasionally casting dismissive glances their way. Humans were novelties, nothing more. Their planet had only recently developed faster-than-light travel, and they were centuries behind most Council races. Among the humans was a young female with deep brown skin and straight black hair pulled tightly away from her face. She walked beside an elderly male with similar features, perhaps a familial connection. My database identified her as Maya Singh, Assistant Cultural Attaché, and him as Dr. Jayesh Patel, xenobiologist. The girl couldn't have been more than 20 standard cycles old, barely an adult by human standards. She carried herself with quiet dignity, though her shoulders occasionally tensed when larger species passed too close. Also present was Captain Elena Vasquez, the apparent security leader, a stern-faced female with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Unlike her companions, she moved with practiced awareness, her gaze constantly scanning. She was the only one who carried what might be a weapon, a small metal cylinder attached to her belt. Analysis suggested it was primitive but potentially lethal at close range. The humans had been invited to observe a diplomatic ceremony later that cycle, a minor courtesy extended to potential future associates. Until then, they appeared to be engaging in what humans call sightseeing, utterly predictable behavior. I activated my neural recorder to document their movements, preparing to append new observations to my report. The human delegation had stopped near the center of the plaza, examining a holographic map of the station. That's when I noticed the Gordon peacekeepers approaching. Gordons are imposing by any standard, thick-limbed, heavily muscled bipeds standing over 2 meters tall, with dense bone ridges protecting vital areas. Their homeworld's punishing gravity had shaped them into natural warriors, and their species had parlayed that advantage into positions throughout the Council's security apparatus. The approaching unit was led by Sergeant Vorth, a decorated veteran I'd encountered during previous assignments. Behind him stomped his ever-present shadow, Lieutenant Grex. I adjusted my position slightly, enhancing my visual feed. Something in Vorth's gait suggested trouble, a deliberate purpose to his movement that triggered warning signals in my analytical subroutines. The Gordons had developed a reputation for aggression toward lesser species, particularly newcomers. The Council tolerated this behavior as an unofficial initiation ritual for aspiring members. Humans. Vorth's translator boomed. His native language, a series of low grunts and chest vibrations, automatically converted to Galactic Standard. You stand in a restricted area. The humans exchanged confused glances. Captain Vasquez stepped forward, her posture non-threatening but firm. We were informed this was a public space, she said, gesturing to the map they had been consulting. Our credentials were approved by station security. Vorth's face ridges darkened, a physiological indication of displeasure. Your information is outdated. This section has been temporarily designated for Council species only. It was a blatant lie. Of course, no such restriction existed. I made a note in my report, curious to see how the humans would respond to this minor harassment. Most new species tended to capitulate, unwilling to risk diplomatic incidents during their probationary period. Dr. Patel, the elderly male, spoke next. His voice carried a soothing cadence that seemed designed to diffuse tension. We apologize for any misunderstanding. Officer, we'll happily relocate. The old human placed a gentle hand on Captain Vasquez's arm, a subtle signal that appeared to temper whatever response she had been preparing. The humans began to gather their belongings, prepared to retreat without protest. As I expected, conflict avoidance, the hallmark of physically inferior species. Then, something unexpected happened. Vorth stepped directly into the path of the young female, Maya Singh. He towered over her, his massive form casting her in shadow. Your kind don't belong here, he said, his translator failing to fully capture the contempt in his natural vocalizations. Soft, weak creatures pretending to be equals. The plaza had grown quieter, ambient conversations fading as attention shifted to the confrontation. The other humans tensed, but remained still, watching. Captain Vasquez's hand hovered near her belt, but she made no move toward her device. Maya Singh looked up at the Gordon, her expression remarkably composed. We're simply visitors, learning about your wonderful station, she said, her voice steady. We mean no offense. What happened next silenced the entire plaza. Vorth's arm moved with startling speed. The open-palmed strike caught Maya across the face with a sound that echoed across the open space. The force knocked her sideways, though she managed to keep her footing. A small trickle of red fluid, human blood, appeared at the corner of her mouth. I found myself rising from my seat, an uncharacteristic reaction that I quickly suppressed. Violence against diplomatic representatives was expressly forbidden by Council law, regardless of species status. Even for the privileged Gordons, this was a significant transgression. The plaza went deathly quiet. Every being within visual range stood frozen, watching. The human delegation had gone completely still. Captain Vasquez's face had drained of color, but she remained motionless, her eyes fixed on Maya. For 3.7 seconds, no one moved. Then, Maya Singh straightened, slowly wiping the blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. She looked at the red smear for a moment, then back up at Vorth. Her expression had transformed, the polite diplomacy replaced by something cold and calculating. That was a mistake, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the silence. Vorth laughed, the sound rumbling from deep in his chest. What will you do, human? Report me to your masters? Hide behind your primitive treaties? Maya's response was not what anyone expected. Combat training facility, Level 7, Section 23, 1 hour. She spoke with such quiet certainty that it took a moment for the translation to register as a challenge. unless you're afraid to face me without an audience. Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. Vorth's face ridges pulsed with dark blood, a sign of both anger and anticipation. "I will break you apart, little human," he growled. "Your species will learn its place." Dr. Patel stepped forward then, positioning himself beside his granddaughter. He was a full head shorter than Maya, and looked positively diminutive next to the Gordon. His age-lined face bore an expression of profound calm. "Sergeant Vorth," he said, his accent more pronounced than the younger humans, "before you accept my granddaughter's challenge, I feel obligated to inform you that our family has a rather specialized background." The old human's demeanor had subtly shifted, though still appearing physically frail. Something in his posture suggested hidden depths. I found myself reassessing his threat classification. "Your warnings mean nothing," Vorth spat. "The combat facility will record your humiliation for all species to witness." Dr. Patel nodded solemnly. "As you wish, but remember, you chose this path." The Gordon turned away with a dismissive gesture, Lieutenant Grex falling in behind him as they stomped toward the northern exit. The human delegation immediately clustered around Maya, voices low but urgent. Captain Vasquez appeared to be arguing vehemently, while Maya remained impassive, touching the bruise forming on her cheek. I activated my neural link to station security. This situation warranted monitoring, and I requested access to the combat facility's surveillance feed. My curiosity had been piqued, not because I expected any significant outcome, but because human response patterns to defeat might provide valuable insights for my report. The combat training facility on Level 7 was designed to accommodate various species training requirements. Section 23 specifically catered to high-gravity species like Gordons, Tracheans. The reinforced walls and impact-absorbing floor panels could withstand forces that would shatter standard station architecture. Various training implements lined the walls, everything from traditional bladed weapons to modern neural disruptors. By the time I arrived, a substantial crowd had gathered. Word had spread quickly through the station's various communication networks. Representatives from at least 14 species jostled for viewing positions, and I detected several unauthorized transmission feeds broadcasting to off-station locations. The Nexus security chief would have a bureaucratic nightmare to deal with later. I secured a position near the western wall, activating enhanced sensory protocols to ensure I missed nothing. The atmosphere hummed with anticipation, a primitive bloodlust that transcended species differences. Council diplomacy often maintained a veneer of civilization, but underneath, the old instincts remained. Vorth arrived first, Lieutenant Grex and 2 other Gordons accompanying him. He had changed into traditional combat attire, reinforced mesh covering vital areas, leaving limbs free for maximum mobility. His skin glistened with ritualistic oils that enhanced both appearance and defensive capabilities. He moved to the center of the training area, performing stretching exercises that displayed his impressive musculature. The humans entered 17 minutes later. Maya Singh had also changed her attire. Simple, form-fitting black garments that covered her from neck to ankle. Captain Vasquez flanked her left side, while Dr. Patel walked on her right. The other humans followed behind, expressions ranging from concern to grim determination. Maya stepped forward alone, stopping 3 meters from Vorth. She performed no stretches, no preparatory rituals. She simply stood, hands relaxed at her sides, watching the Gordon with unnervingly steady focus. Vorth's translator projected his voice across the facility. "The human female will learn respect today. Let all witness the natural order reasserted." Nexus Security had dispatched a Trachean officer to officially oversee the confrontation, standard protocol for sanctioned combat challenges. The insectoid official clicked its mandibles for attention. "This engagement will follow standard challenge protocols," it announced. "No lethal weaponry. Combat continues until surrender, incapacitation, or my intervention." Both participants acknowledged these terms. Vorth grunted affirmation. Maya simply nodded. The Trachean raised its upper limbs, then brought them down sharply. Begin. For 2 full seconds, neither combatant moved. Then Vorth charged, covering the distance between them with surprising speed for his mass. His right arm swung in a devastating arc aimed at Maya's head, a blow that would likely render her unconscious if it connected. It never did. Maya pivoted slightly, the massive fist passing centimeters from her face. In the same fluid motion, she grasped Vorth's extended wrist and used his momentum to pull him further off balance. As he stumbled forward, her elbow struck precisely at the junction where his arm connected to his shoulder. A sharp crack echoed through the facility. Vorth roared, a sound of both pain and outrage. His arm hung awkwardly, clearly dislocated. The crowd's murmuring intensified. I enhanced my visual feed, focusing on Maya's face. Her expression remained eerily calm, almost detached, as if she were performing a routine task rather than engaging in combat with a being 3 times her mass. Recovering quickly, Vorth swung his uninjured arm in a backhanded strike. Maya ducked beneath it and delivered 3 rapid blows to his midsection, targeting specific points with surgical precision. The Gordon's breathing immediately became labored, suggesting damage to his respiratory system. Impossible, someone whispered nearby. I silently agreed. The human's speed and technique defied my previous assessment of their species' capabilities. Enraged, Vorth reached for his belt and activated a small device. An energy pike materialized in his hand, technically not lethal weaponry, but certainly capable of causing severe injury. The violation of combat protocols was blatant, but before the Trachean official could intervene, Lieutenant Grex blocked its path. You dare? Maya's voice carried a new edge. Very well. Dr. Patel stepped forward, his movement so sudden that the Gordons nearest him flinched back. Maya, perhaps I should... No, grandfather, she interrupted, never taking her eyes off Vorth. This was my challenge. The elderly human nodded and stepped back, but not before I noticed him surreptitiously press something into her hand. A small metallic object that gleamed briefly before disappearing into her palm. Vorth lunged with the energy pike, the weapon's tip crackling with painful but non-lethal current. Maya sidestepped with millimeter precision, simultaneously flicking her wrist. The object in her hand extended into a slender rod approximately 30 centimeters long. The Gordon attacked again, and this time Maya parried the energy pike with her rod. The weapons connected with a shower of sparks, but instead of conducting the energy back into Maya as expected, the rod absorbed it completely. Vorth's momentum carried him forward, and Maya used that split second to strike. The rod touched the side of Vorth's neck, discharging the accumulated energy directly into his nervous system. The Gordon convulsed violently, dropping to one knee. The energy pike clattered to the floor, its power source disrupted. The facility had gone completely silent. Not even breathing was audible as every observer struggled to process what they were witnessing. This was not the expected outcome. This defied all logical prediction. Vorth, however, was far from defeated. Gordons evolved on a world where survival often meant continuing to fight despite catastrophic injury. With a guttural roar, he activated a secondary weapon, a wrist-mounted plasma blade that materialized with a sinister hum. This exceeded even modified challenge protocols. The plasma blade was classified as lethal weaponry, designed to cut through battle armor. Using it against an unarmored opponent was tantamount to attempted murder. Violation, the Trachean official called, mandibles clicking frantically. Cease combat immediately. Lieutenant Grex and his companions moved to block any intervention. The situation had spiraled beyond a simple challenge. It had become a dangerous demonstration of Gordon dominance, with council laws blatantly disregarded. Dr. Patel's voice cut through the tension. Maya, enough restraint. Finish this. Something in his tone triggered an immediate reaction in the surrounding crowd. Those nearest to the humans began edging away, creating distance as if subconsciously sensing imminent danger. Maya nodded once, her posture shifting subtly. 3 seconds, she said, the words barely audible. Vorth charged, plasma blade extended. The weapon's edge glowed white-hot, capable of vaporizing human flesh on contact. What happened next occurred so rapidly that even my enhanced perception struggled to capture the sequence. Maya dropped her rod and sidestepped the blade by a margin so narrow that the plasma's heat scorched her clothing. As Vorth's momentum carried him past, Dr. Patel, who had somehow closed the distance without my noticing, executed a movement that defied his apparent age and frailty. The elderly human's arm snaked around Vorth's thick neck, applying pressure to specific points, while his other hand locked the Gordon's arm in a joint manipulation that neutralized the plasma blade. Vorth's massive body went momentarily rigid as nerve clusters were compressed with expert precision. In that instant of paralysis, Maya struck. 1. Her right hand delivered a precision strike to Vorth's temple, targeting the thinnest part of his skull ridge. 2. Her left palm struck upward under his jaw with such force that his teeth shattered, sending fragments across the training area. 3. Both hands clasped together. She brought them down on the exact spot her first blow had weakened. The sound was unforgettable, a wet, cracking impact that echoed through the suddenly silent facility. Vorth's skull collapsed inward, brain matter and blood erupting in a violent spray that spattered across Maya's face and chest. Dr. Patel released his hold, stepping back with practiced efficiency as the Gordon's massive body crumpled to the floor. A pool of dark blood spread rapidly across the impact-absorbing panels. Maya stood over the fallen Gordon, her expression unchanged despite the gore that covered her. She looked up at the stunned crowd, then deliberately wiped a streak of blood from her cheek. Self-defense, she stated calmly, witnessed and recorded. The facility erupted into chaos. Merchants and diplomats scrambled toward exits, shoving and trampling in their panic. Lieutenant Grex bellowed in rage, drawing his own plasma blade and lunging toward Maya. Captain Vasquez finally revealed what her belt cylinder contained, a compressed gravitational singularity that expanded to envelop Grex in a localized field 1.5 times Earth normal. The sudden increase in his perceived weight drove the Gordon to his knees. Station security alarms blared, and armored officers poured into the facility, neural disruptors ready. They formed a perimeter around the human delegation, uncertain whether to treat them as victims or perpetrators. The Trachean official chittered frantically into a communication device, presumably contacting superior authorities. Dr. Patel placed a protective arm around his granddaughter's shoulders. "Come, Maya, let's clean you up." Captain Vasquez stepped forward, addressing the security officers directly. Under Galactic Council Law, Section 47B, Paragraph 3, a diplomatic representative has the right to defend themselves against lethal force with appropriate countermeasures. She gestured to the recording drones that had captured the entire incident. The record will show that Sergeant Vorth escalated to lethal weaponry in violation of both challenge protocols and council law. The highest-ranking security officer, a Meridian with captain insignia, reviewed the footage on a portable display. His multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of intense cognitive processing in his species. "The human's assessment is technically correct," he finally declared. The Gordon violated protocol first by introducing the energy pike, then escalated to lethal force with the plasma blade. He turned all 4 eyes toward the blood-covered Maya. However, the response appears disproportionate. Disproportionate? Captain Vasquez's voice remained level, though her posture had tensed. A plasma blade would have bisected her. There is no proportionate defense against such a weapon except immediate neutralization of the threat. I observed the interplay with fascination, rapidly updating my assessment of human capabilities. Their diplomatic representative had just killed one of the physically strongest species in Council space using nothing but precise anatomical knowledge and trained striking techniques. This suggested humans possessed combat capabilities far exceeding their apparent physical limitations. Lieutenant Grex had been restrained by security officers, still struggling against the gravitational device's effects. "Murderers," he snarled. "The Council will have you expelled. Your species will be banned from Nexus." Dr. Patel turned toward the restrained Gordon, his gentle demeanor completely at odds with the clinical efficiency he had displayed moments ago. "Young man, I would advise against further threats. We came here in peace, willing to endure your colleagues' disrespect and even initial violence. It was only when he escalated to lethal force that we responded in kind." He glanced at the fallen Vorth. "Perhaps you should consider this a valuable lesson in hasty judgment." The rest of the human delegation had formed a protective circle around Maya, Captain Vasquez, and Dr. Patel. They showed no fear despite being surrounded by armed security forces, only alert readiness. A new figure entered the facility, a Korean diplomat in full ceremonial regalia. The slender, blue-skinned being was a council elder, one of the highest authorities on Nexus Station. Security officers immediately straightened to attention. "I have reviewed the incident," the elder announced, her melodious voice amplified by her translator. "While regrettable, the human female acted within council law regarding diplomatic protection. The Gordon representative's use of a Class 3 lethal weapon against an unarmed diplomat constitutes a clear violation." Lieutenant Grex roared in protest, but the elder silenced him with a gesture. "Furthermore," she continued, "the initial assault in the Central Plaza, witnessed by numerous credible sources, provides context for this confrontation. The human delegation will not face charges." Her large, luminous eyes focused on Maya. "Though I would suggest more restraint in future self-defense scenarios." Captain Vasquez stepped forward and bowed formally to the elder. "We appreciate the Council's fairness in this matter. Rest assured, we prefer diplomatic solutions whenever possible." The elder's head tilted slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement tinged with newfound wariness. "Indeed, your delegation is free to continue its scheduled activities. Security will escort you to ensure no further misunderstandings occur." As the humans prepared to leave, I made a final observation that significantly altered my assessment, while the other delegates appeared shocked or disturbed by the violence. The humans themselves showed no such reaction. They moved with coordinated precision, maintaining formation around Maya as security guided them toward the exit. None displayed the expected physiological signs of distress after witnessing such graphic violence. No elevated breathing, no pupil dilation, no stress postures. Most telling was a brief exchange I captured between Maya and Dr. Patel as they passed near my position. "I'm sorry, grandfather," she said softly. "I should have resolved it without killing him." The elderly human patted her hand gently. "You followed the 3-second protocol perfectly, Maya. Sometimes neutralization is the only viable option when faced with superior physical force and hostile intent. Still, the diplomatic complications are manageable," he finished for her. "Captain Vasquez will handle the political aspects. Besides, the Council needed to understand that physical intimidation of humans is inadvisable." They passed beyond my audio range then, but the implications were clear. The kill had not been accidental or driven by panic. It had been executed according to a predetermined protocol. The 3 seconds Maya had mentioned appeared to be a reference to a standard human combat doctrine. I immediately transmitted a priority update to my superiors, dramatically revising my threat assessment of humanity. My previous evaluation had been catastrophically wrong, based on superficial physiological characteristics rather than actual capabilities. Humans were not the soft, harmless creatures they appeared to be. They were precision weapons disguised as diplomats, a species that had evolved to appear unthreatening while harboring lethal potential. Their technological inferiority was rendered irrelevant by their apparent mastery of their own biological limitations. Most concerning was their psychological profile. The humans had remained calm throughout a violent confrontation that had visibly disturbed even hardened council security officers. This suggested either extensive combat conditioning or, more worryingly, a species-wide comfort with violence that exceeded most council races. The incident spread across Nexus Station with unprecedented speed. By the time I returned to the Crystalline Cafe, conversations at every table centered on the human who had killed a Gordon with her bare hands. Witness accounts had already grown exaggerated, some claiming Maya had moved too fast to see, others insisting she had predicted Vorth's attacks before he made them. The truth, as I had observed it, was perhaps more disturbing than the rumors. Humans had not demonstrated any supernatural abilities or exotic biological advantages. They had simply applied precision, training, and anatomical knowledge with ruthless efficiency. This suggested their capabilities were not limited to a few exceptional individuals, but could potentially be developed in any member of their species. 2 cycles later, I observed the human delegation one final time before their scheduled departure. They had been assigned a council liaison and treated with notably increased deference by station personnel. Species that had previously ignored them now gave them a wide berth, conversations falling silent as they passed. Maya Singh showed no lingering effects from the violent encounter. The bruise on her cheek from Vorth's initial strike had been treated, leaving no visible mark. She walked beside Dr. Patel, engaged in animated conversation about some xenobiological discovery. Nothing in her demeanor suggested she had brutally killed a being 3 times her size just days earlier. As they passed the spot where Vorth had first confronted them, Dr. Patel paused briefly, glancing around with a subtle smile before continuing on. The gesture was not triumphant or aggressive, merely acknowledging. It sent an involuntary shiver through my sensory receptors. My final report to Vaxian Intelligence contained a recommendation that fundamentally contradicted my initial assessment. Humans should be classified as a high-priority species for ongoing surveillance, despite their apparent technological limitations. Their combination of unassuming appearance, lethal capability, and psychological comfort with violence made them uniquely dangerous in the galactic community. Most concerning was the realization that humans had likely been aware of how other species perceived them and had made no effort to correct these misconceptions. This suggested a deliberate strategy. Let the galaxy underestimate humanity until it was too late to adjust to the reality. As the human delegation's transport departed Nexus Station, I found myself wondering what other surprises they might be concealing behind their fragile-seeming exteriors and diplomatic smiles. For the first time in my long career as an intelligence analyst, I felt something dangerously close to fear. The galaxy had just received its first lesson about humanity, delivered in 3 seconds of perfect violence. Those who appear harmless may be the most dangerous of all. In the months following what became known as the Nexus incident, Galactic Council policy toward human representatives underwent a subtle but significant shift. No official acknowledgement was ever made regarding the death of Sergeant Vorth. His name was quietly removed from Gordon's service records, and Lieutenant Grex was reassigned to a remote outpost beyond Council space. Human diplomats continued to present themselves with the same unassuming demeanor, never mentioning their capabilities unless directly questioned. They maintained their position as technological newcomers, eager to learn from more advanced species. But something fundamental had changed. No further initiation rituals were attempted against human representatives. Security escorts assigned to human delegations were quietly doubled, their briefings updated with new protocols, and in private council chambers, discussions about humanity's future role in galactic affairs took on a distinctly more cautious tone. For my part, I requested and received permanent assignment to human observation duty. There was too much we didn't understand about these deceptively dangerous beings. Too many questions about what other capabilities they might be concealing behind their disarming smiles and seemingly fragile bodies. One question in particular haunted my analysis. If this was how humans responded to a mere slap, how would they react to a genuine threat? I suspect the galaxy will find out eventually. And when that day comes, I doubt anyone will be smiling.